We're starting Chav Dalar Rabban Aleph, bava basra Chav Dalar Rabban Aleph. We're starting from 4 lines from the bottom of Chav Gimel Rabban Beis. Toshma. We're going to continue with the words of the Mishnah. Come in here and I'll ask you a kasha from the Hemshech of the Mishnah where it says, Im Nimtze, if one found a pigeon ben shnei shevachis, between the two dovecotes, karev lezeh shalei. If it's karev, if the pigeon was found closer to one dovecote, it belongs to that person who it's closer to. Karev lezeh shalei. If it was karev to the second one, the pigeon was it's closer to the second dovecote, it belongs to the second owner. Even though one of the dovecotes was much bigger than the other, which means it had more pigeons, so we should go after the raiv. And now Shaila was karev or raiv. We usually go after the raiv. Here you see you go after the karev, because you said even though the other dovecote might have been bigger, we still go according to where the pigeon was closer to. And for the Gemara Hakmayaskin over here, it's talking about Sheshneim Shavim, that both dovecotes were the exact same size. One was not bigger than the other. Now the Gemara is assuming, like, because it's not talking about that the bird is hopping, so it's a flying bird, so it could have even came from much further away. So let us go according to the rave of the world and say that its hatke came from far away. And the Gemara answers over here, it's talking about Bishvil Shel Kramim, that it was found in a pathway between two vineyards, and it was only happy. We're talking about it cannot fly, so it's for sure it didn't come from far away. How could we be talking about more than 50 yamas? That's what it seems like, because it had guidance from the kramim, from the vines. So from the vines, it was able to go a little further. Because if you're going to say it came from far away, so since it's hopping and it's not flying, it's unable to come from such a far distance. And the rule is that a pigeon that's hopping only hops away as far as it is, as long as it can still see its nest. So if it's and then medadi, then it will keep on hopping. But if it's unable to see its nest, loy medadi, it will not hop further, and therefore it has to be between these two shuvachim that were on the path between the two vineyards. Because if you're talking about further away, different dovecotes, which it has to go through vineyards, which it would never see its nest, it would never hop that far. So it has to be that the pigeon was between these two dovecotes. So the Gemara is going to bring a right to Rabbi Chanina that when you have a choice between Reiv and Karev, we go after the Reiv. So too, we learned in the Mishnah Nida. The blood that was found in the vaginal canal, or Bapraise that they call it the corridor, the blood that was found there, Sveike Tame. The suffix of that blood is Tame, is Avade Tame, because we say the Chazak is that it came from the uterus, from further down and from inside the stomach. Even though there's a chamber above the vaginal canal, which is right next to it, that it could have leaked downward. Usually it's from a bruise. Nevertheless, we go according to the Raiv, and the Raiv comes from the uterus. That's why. So you have a Raiv, if a Raiv, which is far away from the uterus, or Karev, which is the chamber above the canal, that the blood could have leaked from there. We go according to the Raiv, because majority of the time the blood that is found in the vaginal canal is coming from the uterus. Rava said, no, you have no raya. Here it's Raiv Umatzi comment. Here you're talking about the majority, and you're also talking about frequent and consistency of frequency. The frequent, most common is that the blood comes from the uterus. So when you have a Raiv together with something that's more frequent, there's no mandrama that says you'll go after the karev. Here you have two factors here. You have the factor of being a raiv and that it's more common. What do we? Now the next piece of the Gemara is not going to prove when you have roiv umatsui, when you have two factors that overrides the factor of karev. No, he's going back to Abaya's raya. Abaya, I'm going to prove to you that when we said it was a suffix from where it came, either from the uterus or from the chamber above the vaginal canal. So it's not because it's a suffix that's why she's tummy. It's not a suffix. It's a vade tuma. We say it came from the uterus. Where do we see this? The Tanya B'chia Dama needn't praise that the blood that's found in the vaginal canal chayavnu Allah al b'yis mikdash. The woman is going to be chayav to bring a chatas. Now, if that you can only bring a chatas into the azara only if it's a vadai chatas. If it's a suffix that it might be chulin, then she would not be able to bring the carbon because it's forbidden to bring a suffix chulin into the azara. It might be chulin if it's only a suffix if she's tummy. And the same thing, the Seif Nalaf is Hatruma, it says that if she saw blood in the vaginal canal and she touched the truma, then the truma has to be burnt. But if it's a suffix truma, then it would be toilen. Toilen means that it's hanging. You wouldn't. They wouldn't eat it. They wouldn't burn it. So, and this that we say that we do burn it, it has to be not because she's telling me suffix, because it's a vade tuma. So it's a proof that we go after the rave, which is a vade tuma. Amar Rava, Rava said Shmami Nam Rabchia last. We learned out from Rabchia 3 points. Shmami Na Rave v'Karev Halacha Harayv. When you have a choice of rave and karev, like by the isha, if it came from the uterus, which is further away, or from the chamber over the vaginal canal, we say rave is adif, and we say it's a vadai truma, that we burn the truma because we don't say truma, and she brings her carbon chatas, and it's not considered as a suffix chatas because she wouldn't be able to bring her carbon because it's suffix chulim ba'azara. You're not allowed to bring. It's us lahavi suffix chulim ba'azara. So you have a raya that it's that the rave color you go after the rave. Ushmamina rubu daraisa, and rave is menat Torah because if it would only be medarabana takanos chachamim, the din is that you don't bring a carbon or burn the truma on a truma derabana. Ushmamina isel rabzeda. We also say the halach is like rabzeda. Rabzeda said afa pishet las medina neula is to somebody who found meat, where the majority of the stores were kosher stores. So a basra shchuta, they sold slaughtered geshachtna meat, kosher meat. So we said it's kosher, the meat is kosher. Sometimes, and the gate was closed, even though the city gates were closed. So meaning, what does he want to say with that? Because there are different cases where the Chacham Masaka, we can't rely on one rave like over here, that we're relying on one rave, that most of the stores were basra shchuta. Sometimes you have to rely on another rave, that, let's say, if the gates were open, that most of the butchers that are coming in to sell the meat were basra shchuta, so you have side from the outsiders who are coming in with kosher meat, and side in the city, most of the stores are kosher. So that's called a double rave, that you need sometimes 2 raves. But here he's telling you, no. He's coming to tell you, Allah's like I'm saying, in this case, it has a din. Like basra shchuta that was found by not most of the stores that were selling basra shchuta, that the basra is kosher, even though you don't have the rave from the outside people, the outside butchers who are coming to sell their kosher meat into the city, because we're talking about that the doors of the Medina were closed. So here, the Ha'isha, the Chidlas is in the Medina, the Ulis Damya. Here, by the woman, it's considered as one rave. Why? Because there's only the rave that the blood, most of the blood comes from the uterus. There's no other rave involved. Nevertheless, we still go after the rave. In fact, you bring a rave from there. That the rave is different. It had 2 factors. Outside the factor of being a rave, and side the factor that it was frequent, more common. And nobody argues when you have those 2 factors that overrides the karev. So it's Rava retracted, and he said the factor of being frequent is not a factor to determine that it should be that the tumah came from there. it's really included in the Raiv. It's not enough of a factor to say, oh, we have a second factor to override the curve. It's considered as one factor which is included in the Raiv. And then you're only dealing with a Raiv and the curve. Matsui is not another factor because it doesn't determine. That's not a determination to make it Tameh just by being frequent. So when we learned if there was a wine barrel that was found floating in the river, Rav said, if it was found facing a city which most were Yidden, then you're allowed to use that barrel of wine. But if it was found a kegen facing a city that was mostly Goyim, it's going to be Asa because we're Chesed of Yayin Nesach, it's Exeda, and it's Asa. Shmuel says, Shmuel says, even if it was found against facing a city which was most Yidden, it's still going to be Asa. Eimar, he says, because say, Dika Asa, he came from the city from the Kira. Kira was called, and that was a region of Goyim, which was up the river of Pras, and that it came from a place where no Yidden were found. Says the Gemara, let us say that Rav and Shmuel are arguing in the same machlokes in the arguing in if you hold like Rav Chanina, the Ma'is like Rav Chanina. Shmuel who asks the Chavis even when it's facing the Ir Sherubi Yisrael, the city that's mostly Yidden, because he holds like Rav Chanina, that we look according to the Raiv. And the Raiv, where's the wine coming in that region? The Raiv wine was from Goyim. And Rav argues, he's mate, if it was found facing a city with Raiv Yisrael, we don't go according to the Raiv, we go according to the Karev, where it was closer, and it was closer to the ear, which was Rubi Yisrael. Says, no, Lav Dafka, that's what they're arguing about. They all hold of Rabbi Chanina that you go basra. How come over here? This is what they're arguing. Rav holds if it came from the city of the region of Dikra, from up the river, Akuli, Shuri, there would have been these twirls that makes things sink, so the barrel would have sunk down, or Shuri, or when the snow melts, it overflows, so it would have turned to the side. It would have never reached to them. But Shmuel says no. It did reach to them because it could have been that it fell in the middle where the current is very strong, and it would have brought it down to the city, which is Rubi Yisrael. So there was this barrel of wine that was found in a vineyard that was Arla. Now Arla, the first 3 years you can't have Arla. So this Karen was obviously stolen. So this Karen was now found in the vineyard where it's all Arla. So Shari Avina said it's mutter. You could use it. It's not considered. This barrel of wine is not Allah. Let us say because he holds like Rabbi Chanina, because the Raiv, if the Raiv of the Kramim were not Allah. So therefore, when you look on the Raiv from the outside, since the Raiv is not Allah, so this barrel is not Allah. So you want to know, shiny husband there, it's different. The if it was stolen from this vineyard, he would never hide it in this vineyard because maybe those people who are the workers who are going to press the grapes are going to see this barrel. He would never hide it. It would be found. This was all said by wine. But what's if clusters of grapes were cut off? Matzni, we say there they would hide it before harvesting because you could hide it even there. And therefore, those grapes that were detached, we're going to say it's for sure Allah. Says those leather flasks of wine, that was found between the vines of a Yid, Sharino Rabbana. Sharino Rabbana was mated and said, it's you could drink the wine, it's not from Goyim. Let us say, should we say, Rabbi does not like Rabbi Chanina? because most of the wine from those that are passing by are goyim. So if you want to shine your husband there, it's different. Because Ruba, the Shvuchai, you only know. Most of the people who poured the wine into these leather flasks were Yidden. And then you want to limit it only if there were big flasks, which were made for the people who sold wine. That's the kind of flask that we're talking about. It came from Yidden because most of it was poured by Yidden. But what's if there were small flasks? Maybe it doesn't know. But if it was a small leather flask, we'll say it came from those that were passing by. But what's if he found between the small flasks big ones? So then we're going to say, okay, that's already from the Mechre Yain, from those that sell the wine. And we'll say those small little flasks were just to keep the load on the animal even out, so it shouldn't tilt to one side. We distance the tree from a city 25 amas for the beauty of the city. That on the outskirts of the city there should be open space. And by a carob tree or by a sycamore tree, because the branches are very thick. So therefore, in order not to clog up the open space in front of the city, in the outskirts for the beauty, so we distance 50 amas. Abashal says any barren tree which is not becoming for the city should be at least 50 amas away from the border of the city. And if the city was there first, so the kaitzitz, so then the Bala Ilan has to cut off his tree if the city was there, and it's within the 25 or 50 amas depending what tree. And we don't have to pay him for his tree. But what's if his tree was there before the city came around? Kaitzitz, first we cut down the tree. And then the Bnei Yair have to pay him for the Demei Ya'ilah. If it's a suffix, if the city was there first, or the tree was planted first, then we cut down the tree, we don't give him any money. What is the reason that we distance the tree from the city? For the beauty of the city. This didn't, that you're not allowed to plant trees next to the city, we already know from a different Mishnah. It says they ain't nothing sada with late migash. They nice and sada migash. You can't transform a field into open area. With late migash sada, nor can you transform an open place into a field. In the Eretz Yisrael, well, of course, by the Levim, we know for a fact that 1,000 amas of open space and then 1,000 amas of sadis to plant. In order that they should be able to live off. So you weren't allowed to transform the open space into a field and the fields into open space. So we already know that you weren't allowed to play around with the open space at the outskirts of the city. So you might like the where you want to answer, we're going according to the Shita Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar said only by the cities of the Levium there was an Iser to transform the open space into a field. But any other city didn't have these criteria. So therefore, you're allowed to transform it. But nevertheless, even though Rabbi Lezer said you're allowed to transform an open space into a field, Hach is different. Here, but in the 25 amas or the 50 amas, depending on the tree, for the beauty of the city and the outskirts of the city, the tree shouldn't be planted within 25 amas or 50 amas if it's a carob tree or a sycamore tree or a barren tree. So, and even according to Rabbanan that say that it applies not only to Levim, to everywhere, that we don't make a field out of open space. I'm sorry, you transform a field into open space, or open space in the field applies everywhere. This was only said by Zion, by wheat or by other kinds of plants. But trees, we're allowed to do it because it's not blocking the open space. You can still walk around. But when there is, when you have wheat and the different plants growing there, then it's not the place of open space that you can walk around. The hacha, and over here, Mishum no yair, Like, even though you're allowed to plant trees in these open spaces, even according to Rabbanan, but nevertheless, right next to the city, not. They said at least 25 amas away for any regular tree, ordinary tree, or for a sycamore or carob tree, you need 50 amas away. Even though you're allowed to have trees in that open space. In fact, from where do we know to say there's a difference between if it's Zoyim, it's not considered as open space, but if it's Ilanis, it's still considered as open space. The Tanya that we learned in the Braisa, Kafir Yesim Beis Hasan Jokel Ladira. But there's a din that a kafir is an enclosed area, but it's of a big area more than Beis Hasan, which is 5,000 square feet, which was the same. The Chacham were geyser that you're not allowed to carry on Shabbos 4 ames in a kafir that's bigger than the 5,000 square feet, which was the share of the Chatzah of the Mishkan. That was the Gezerah. Unless it was hukav l'd'shem dinner, unless it was used like a Chatzah to your house. So when is it? So the Gemara says, Kafir Yesem Beis Hasan Jokel Ladira. They said if it was a hukav l'dira, then you would be able to carry in that area on Shabbos. But Nizar, but what's if you planted the plants, wheat and different plants? Then it's no more hukav l'dira. He took it out of the geda of that it's a part of your deer where you live that you should be able to carry in the enclosed area, because it's no more called as an extension of your deer. But what's if he planted trees? It still has a din like a chatzah to your house, a mutter, and you're allowed to carry in that area. So you see, if he plants their seeds, tfuah, then it doesn't have a din anymore as part of the dira. You see, it's a whole different. It's not called like open space chatzah. It's not called a chatzah. But if there was trees planted there, it's still called a chatzah because he can still walk around as part of his house and walk into the chatzah there. So the trees are not a deterrence from the open space. So you see the difference between trees and tvur if you planted plants on the ground. We learned in the Mishnah, if the city was before the plants, before the trees were planted, we make him cut down the tree, we don't pay him anything. In fact, why is it different than by bird? When somebody had a bird and his neighbor planted a tree, the Ketani over there, we learned, he has to cut the tree, but we have to pay him. And over here, when the city was there first and he planted a tree, the Ketani was said, he has to cut it. We don't give him any money. He says, when you have a pot, which many people are chefs on, it's not going to get warmed or it's not going to get cold, because each one is going to rely on the other. And so too here, if you're going to have to rely on us paying him before you cut down the tree, it'll never happen, because nobody's going to take the first initiative to start paying. Each one will rely on let the other guy start. In fact, my kusha, what's the kasha? Dilma, Shani Hazek the Rabbim, Hazek the Yachid. Here you can say it's such a simple difference. The Hazek the Rabbim, here it's a harm for the Rabbim. So therefore he doesn't get paid. Hazek the Yachid, so the Chacham weren't Mechayiv, the Balailam, to cut his tree without money if it's only a Hazek against the Yachid. But a Hazek against the whole city, it's a Hazek the Rabbim. So there the Chacham were Mechayiv the Balailam to cut it even without money. So you're right. Rather, if you want to learn the Shaila of Rav Kahana, Sefer Yitma, it goes on the Sefer. It says, if the tree was planted there before the city was built, it says the Kaitzis. He first has to cut down the tree, and then we're nice and done. And only then do we give him the money. So that's what Rav Kahana is. First, let the Bnei give me the money, and then I'll cut it down. So Rav Kahana said that when you're dealing with relying on getting paid first, the tree will always stay there, because nobody's going to take the first initiative to stop paying this guy for the tree. So therefore, the tree will stay there forever, and he will be happy that his tree is there. That's why we tell them first cut it and then collect your money. Suffix zakadam, suffix zakadam, koitzitz. It says it's a suffix if the city came first or the tree was planted first. We cut down the tree, and it's number. We don't give him a penny. Why is it any different by bird if it's a suffix? If his tree came before the bird or the bird came before the tree, the amrit you said lo yakitz, he doesn't have to cut it at all if it's a suffix. And when you want a hasam there by the ilam which was planted next to the bird, the father lav make its guy. Surely, if the ilam was there before the bird, the tree would never be cut down. It's not made to be cut down. So therefore, as a suffix, since it's not supposed to be cut down, and now became a suffix, so now it's a mitzvah chaveri. If you want my tree to come down, it's al balabay to bring proof that his body was there first. But here in our case, where there's even if the tree came before the city, it has to be always cut. The din is that we cut it, so it's becheskes that has to be cut. So therefore, we cut it. Therefore, we cut it. I'm sorry, the vadil make it sky. Even if the tree came before the city, we say for sure it has to be cut. Sveikanami. Therefore, even if it's going to be a suffix, like kites, we say to cut it because that's the din. It always has to be cut. And if you're going to say because of the money, so now you're talking about a suffix who came first, and for sure the chazak is that has to be cut down. So now you want money. But the cutting down happens even before asking for money. So now you want to take out money because it was cut down. I said, because it's v'cheskas that it's supposed to be cut. One has to distance his permanent granary from the city 50 amas. And he brings down Rashi because the shaft that goes flying and it falls on any plant, it dries up the plant, it dries up the plowing area also. And then he says a person shouldn't make a permanent granary in his field. Only if he has 50 amas to every side, so that the shaft shouldn't fall on the other guys, on his neighboring plants and cause it to dry up. And he has to distance it from the saplings of his friend, and from his field that was plowed, in order that the shaft shouldn't dry up, in order that the shaft shouldn't harm the saplings and the plows, the field that was plowed. Why in the Reisha you said the lashon machikin goyim kavur min ha'ir? Only if there's a hachak of 50 amas. And then he said in the Sefer, without saying a shear. You just said, only that it shouldn't, you only have to distance it enough that it shouldn't do harm. In the Reish, he said you have to distance it 50 amas. In the Sefer, he gave no shear. You have to distance it as long enough that it shouldn't do harm. The Sefer is talking about that you don't have to distance it so far because we're talking about not a permanent granary, which means what's considered as not a non-permanent granary. Any granary that doesn't need a shovel to throw it up so that the wind should separate the shaft from the tvuah, then that's not considered as a permanent granary. Why? Because if you have big piles, heavy piles, the wind will not be able to take off the shaft. So you have to use the tool, the shovel, to throw it up in the air in order that the wind should blow it away. But if it's not a permanent granary, so it's small little piles, so the wind itself just blows off the shaft. So there, it doesn't go that far. So therefore you don't need 50 amas. But for the permanent ones that you have to come onto the shovel and throw it up in the air, there you're going to need 50 amas because it's going to blow and you're throwing it up, and if the wind blows it, it's going to go much further. Ravashi says no. Really, it's 50 amas all along the whole Mishnah, Reisha and the Sefer. And the Sefer is just saying a reason. What's the reason that we said the hachaka 50 amas? What's the whole reason that you have to distance it 50 amas from your neighbors? That's what the Sefer is coming to tell you. The reasoning behind it, in order that it shouldn't harm your neighboring fields, the saplings of your neighboring fields. Basically, affecting Marakasha on Abaya's teretz, that Abaya says that they are different. The Sefer is talking about a different shear. A shear that if it's not a permanent granary, you don't need 50 amas. We learned in the Braisa, it says that one should distance a permanent granary from the city 50 amas. Just like you distance from the city 50 amas, so too you have to distance the permanent granary midluav from the gourds and mikshuav and the cucumbers and the and from the saplings and from the plow that is Chava had done, 50 amas, and then look how he finishes off Kadesh Lo Yazik in order that it shouldn't do harm. So it shows like the wording is like our Mishnah. It shows like he's just giving a reason. He's not saying a new shir. It's Mishlem Rabashi Nicha. According to Rashi, it fits because he's saying Kadesh Lo Yazik. The Mishnah said it, that it's the Sefer of the Mishnah is only saying a reason why we have to distance it 50 amas. El Abaya, but according to Abaya, that he says the Sefer is talking about a different shir. Kasha is a kasha from the words of the Braisa. From the words of the Braisa, it's mashma that there's no second type of a shear by a granary that's not a permanent kasha. It's taka kasha.